Welcome to Nerdy Book Club, AKIRA Volume 1 by Katsuhiro Otomo. I picked this because I saw the movie when I was a teenager. I watched it over and over and over again, and I always wanted to read the comic, and so finally I got to, at least part of it, and I really, really liked it. Are we giving ratings? I guess we are, eh? I give it at least an 8 out of 10, but I think once I read if I finish the whole series, I might give it a higher rating, but so far it's an 8 out of 10. Obviously, I can't talk about it without comparing it to the movie, but I'll save that for later. So now I'm just going to go, based on what I see, I'll go to Carlos next.
Okay. I'm still Mr. Salazar in my Zoom, I realize.
Your hair is so long.
Again, I'm going to give the story a 7. I think it's like a really good start. I feel like the characters, like their characterization for the most part is like really thin. And I think it develops, I wouldn't be surprised if it developed a little bit more. The artwork is an 8 or a 9. Like it flows really wonderfully, and he does a lot of really interesting things with comics and page design. And I will choose Eric or Fiend. Whoever wants to go first.
Guess what, guys? We didn't read it.
We forgot.
Yeah, we forgot. Sorry again. But we're going to give it a 9 out of because there are so many jokes that... Wait, is it still... Am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Because everybody seems to understand this movie that we haven't seen, and yeah, so we're gonna give it a 9. Moving on, Michael Primal.
I will give this collection probably a 7.5 or 8. I like the artwork. Found the whole thing very cinematic. The pacing was very even, weak on the characters, but very entertaining. And I will select Oliver and Friends. Oh my gosh, we'll do Oliver. Who else? Who else in Oliver's?
It's Lucy and Keith.
Lucy. All right, let's pick Lucy.
I love AKIRA. Am I unmuted?
No, it's unmuted.
Damn it, help.
No, you're unmuted. You're unmuted.
Okay, fine.
Speak into the cat.
Oh, I really liked it. I've been wanting to read this manga for a while. And the art's definitely a 10 because it's just amazing. I need to read more of the manga to get a better feel for it, but it did, I don't know, I'm going to give it like a 9.5, I think, for the story. So, all right. Who needs to go? Like, raise your hand. Or
do you want
we
the
just
rest
go
of us?
down?
You should all go.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just go down line.
Yeah, I really like it. I'll give the art a 10, and I'll give the story an 8. That's because it just jumps right into the action, and like you don't get much. You know, like Kaneda and Tetsuo just like all of a sudden it's like, all right, now we're gonna kill each other. I was like, I think maybe it would have been better if there'd been like a little more
setup of that relationship.
Yeah.
Two boys on amphetamines. There's no reasons to fight.
Yeah. But yeah, like the artwork, like it's so detailed and amazing, and it's like like these three panel pages, and yet like thousands of like line drawings in them. It's amazing. I really like the world that they're creating. But the plot does race along a little bit too much, I think.
Hello, or
I'll
also
go.
a 15-year-old. So I give it an 8.5. I think it's really, really good. I think like the world building it does, and the way that it introduces like all of these like really detailed characters and different like groups within the world and how they all like interconnect with each other is really incredible. I think it's really amazing how it's like over 30 years old now and it still feels incredibly modern and relevant. I don't think it's perfect. I do have some complaints about it, but I think like by and large, it is a comic that has aged very well and is considered a classic for a reason. So Jolie, you just came in, so you have knock on. So why don't you go, Jolie? Hello.
Hi. Can everyone hear me okay with the loud AC to my left?
Yeah,
Okay,
we
great.
can't hear it at all.
Pardon?
We can't hear the AC at all.
Oh, okay, perfect. Oh my God. I give this a 7 for now. Just waiting to discuss it. Oh, yes, one favorite thing. Do you know what? My one favorite thing is probably the one thing that scared me as a child when I first watched the film was like the mutant children group. Yeah, that was probably like that whatever that lore is that's happening. I feel like reading it was it was still creepy, but I liked it more. You know, I could shut the book if it scared me, but anyway. Yeah, that's it.
So Jolie, just pick. Yeah, who else is left?
I think I am.
Okay.
Oh, John.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a solid 9. It's like it's definitely my first time reading it, and I went ahead and already ordered volume 2 to kind of let you know how much I enjoyed it. So I'm really ready to dive in and finish it, and hopefully my library will open soon so I can get the last few parts that they got. So yeah, solid 9 to start.
So I just want to say next, who's seen the movie here? Raise your hand if you've seen the movie.
So long ago. That
Okay, yeah. One thing I noticed about this is that, I mean, this was one of the first mangas I think that was translated into English for the American market. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but I think at that time, if I would have read it, it would have seemed a lot more different. But there's so much manga influence now that there's a lot of comics that are like this. But the one thing I noticed is that because it was strictly art and dialogue and no narration, no thought balloons the way an American comic would, as I was reading it, it almost felt like just storyboards, right? Because the movie is directed by the author. And so as I was reading it, to be honest, I really just felt like, you know what, I'd rather just, I want to watch the cartoon. And I'm not saying anything bad about the comic, but because it was basically a storyboard, it's almost like, it's not like Watchmen where you can read all these little things. I really felt like I'd rather just be watching the movie. Did anyone else feel that way or no? Mike Prime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, like I said, it was very cinematic. Has everybody gone already?
Jeff, did you go? Oh, sorry. I thought you went, Jeff. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Too polite to say anything.
I had it on speaker view. That's why.
Like 50% Canadian.
Yeah.
I would give it a. No, I thought about this. I think probably a 7. Like I really wanted to like it a lot, and it's beautiful in one way. Like the art is beautiful in one way, and not beautiful in another way. Like in a lot of the character design. I think I watched the movie probably like 25 years ago, so I don't really remember well. All I remember is being really confused at times.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like kind of the same way a little bit with reading the book, and like I really liked it, but I'm glad I read it. About a 7. But like I think Mike's comment about it feeling so, I think you both Mike's are like that's the key. Like it's so cinematic because there's just it's all action and dialogue. Like it's pure scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that takes away from scene, which is kind of amazing and I think hard to do.
Is there anybody else who hasn't gone yet?
Yeah, like has. Oh,
Patrick.
Well, I'll just keep it brief and I'll give it a 7.5. Because I don't feel well equipped to judge manga as much as I can other types of comics. So maybe I can get an education in the course of our entertainment that will refine my score. So I'm sorry, unless Mike, you had.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was in another short-lived book club. Short-lived, my attendance was. I think the book club is still going, but it was an inferior book club. But whatever. No, it was really garbage. But so we discussed another manga there, and somebody told me that the way that these are produced is that they would have like a cadre of artists who would like specialize on one thing. Like, you're the tree guy, so you're just gonna draw all the trees in this thing. Now, that's not the case with this, right? Like, indeed, Katsuhiro drew the whole thing. As far
as I know, as far as we know, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was a crappy book club. Maybe he was lying about that. I don't know.
No, that is 100% true. I don't know. There are
like, how do we know? Do they credit the tree people? Like, if you're the tree guy, do you get a credit?
Generally not.
Oh.
Generally not. There are artists. He might be one of them. There are artists who do everything. Like what are they called?
Auteurs.
Or auteurs, yeah. But I was just trying to think of some names. Like Tezuka does all of his own drawings. He also produced like 6 pages a day his entire adult life, which is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Side note. But yeah, in general, like there's somebody who does like backgrounds or parts of backgrounds or shading, and there's a lot of like pre-cut backgrounds, but I'm not sure what the case is with this.
Okay.
So should we talk about the art more? Because I thought the art, again, I think Jeff said this, that he wanted to like it or wanted to love it, but didn't love it, sort of. I felt like I thought the architecture was great. The motorcycles looked incredible. And I thought the figures were good, but I don't think the faces were, I don't think they were masterclass. But they were definitely good. But I felt like the strength in the art was definitely the architecture and like the vehicles. Like, did anyone else feel that? Guess not.
I think for me, it really goes figure to figure.
Yeah.
Like, I think like the design of the stupid gym teacher that like beats the kids up is like really strong. Like, that design is strong. I think Tetsuo always has looked a little off-putting to me. And like, there's something about the big forehead that I can't quite like.
Mm-hmm.
I like the movement and just how he does movement. I thought is really good.
I think the big forehead is supposed to be unnerving, right?
Yeah, because he's like a freak.
Yeah.
He's like super.
Also, it doesn't start that big. Like, it like grows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think everybody in that sort of in that group has that the same, where their head is like a regular size, but all of their features are sort of like concentrated towards the center, making everything else appear kind of big. I'm just looking at it right now. It's like that general has it, the general with the brush cut has it, all the kids, quote unquote kids, have it. Yeah, pretty much anyone who isn't part of their little like boy gang.
Well, doesn't that kind of design where the forehead is really prominent? Isn't that supposed to make you think like, oh, they got psychic powers, or they're very intelligent, or there's big brains going on in there?
That's how I interpreted it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I really like how they do faces, by the way, because sometimes in manga, in comic books in general, they don't do a very good job of distinguishing characters with like he was, I thought, very skillful at that. Like, he didn't like kind of have overwrought drawings, so he was able to like make distinct different characters. Like, other than like hairstyles, because I feel like that's a shorthand that a lot of comic book artists rely on. They're like, oh, they have different hair, they're obviously different.
Or clothes.
Or clothes. So I like that their facial structures were very different. Like the one guy in the gang had
Yamagata.
Yamagata. Like he has such a weird pointy chin. I thought that was fun. And like the
R.I.P. Yamagata.
yeah, so I was like, oh no.
I don't remember this character from the movie. Why is that? Oh.
Whatever. Just gym teacher too. I love that he looks super weird. And they make fun of his chin.
Or the politician who looks like a rat. There's a lot of literal interpretation.
Yeah.
Kind of like, he's a psychic, he has a big head. He's a politician, he has big rat teeth.
Well, I mean, there's a certain sort of simplicity in the communication that comes with that obvious, like, visual metaphor.
Which is?
I mean, it makes it, like, immediately readable to the audience. Like, yes, it's very obvious, but, I mean, that's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of the point.
But, like, readable is what?
Like, readable as in, like, you have a character, his personality is that he's kind of slimy and a rat, so you make him look slimy and like a rat, and it immediately makes it very clear to the audience, like, or to the reader rather, you know, what this character's function within the story is.
Yeah, like using stereotypes.
I'm not saying that all
iconic
graphic novels
iconic
have to be that way. I'm just saying there is a style where that specific kind of like visual communication has a purpose.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't. Maybe someone here is much more of a expert in manga, and can speak to this. But this is written from between 80, like what we're reading was around 82, right? And
yeah, you're right, 82.
And certainly that's not like the very beginning of manga. Like I think Astro Boy is 50s, right? But I feel like now like, there's such a huge amount of manga, and a lot of the language of manga has become sort of stylized and solidified. And like I see this a lot with Western, like say Western teenagers copying manga, and there's like certain things, styles that show up again and again and again. Like figures look a certain way, and I feel like this book isn't using that same language. Like it feels like it's establishing patterns rather than copying patterns, if that makes sense. Like it's much more sort of all over the place. Like it doesn't feel like it's just like there's one style. I feel like there's like all this experimentation, and different faces are doing different things, and there's sort of iconic imagery, and there's representational imagery, and I feel like it's a lot more of a hodgepodge of styles rather than one solidified style. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's sort of viewed in that way. Like, this is sort of a shift. Like, for Japan, comics, like, occupy, like, a similar space as television, like, for a long time. Like, there's a like, post-war, like, you would, like, rent manga the same way that people, like, would rent videotapes. Like there were like manga rental stores. Like there's like a deep history here, but this is like considered like a switch moment. Like
in the same way that Dark Knight and Watchmen is in 86. So kind of the same thing happening in the 80s.
So can someone who knows more talk us through that? Like, is it the art? Is it the mode of storytelling? Is it the themes? Like, what makes it like the giant that it is in the firmament of manga?
I mean, I would say it's primarily the art. Like, robots and dystopia are not altogether, like, aren't alien. Like, going back to Tezuka, like, he had a comic called Metropolis that was basically a dystopian fantasy in, like, before Astro Boy, so like 50. But I think it was primarily like the art style, also sort of, I don't know, like this, like, is sort of seen as like a switch to sort of punk, I don't know, aesthetic, like like the way that, like, sort of ideas around punk, like juvenile delinquency, basically. Like, it would have been unusual for, like, juvenile delinquent characters before this to be in manga. I'm searching.
Because before they were all after school special types?
No, not at all. But it would be like, I don't know, like, okay, so Lupin the Third, right? Like, preceded this, but he's sort of like a dashing thief, right? Like, he's not, like, I don't know. Like, the idea of, like, having, I don't, like, basically, like, kids who go to a vocational school, who are forced into, like, the Japanese, I don't want to say, like, lower class, but yeah, the Japanese lower class in, like, a mainstream manga being, like, the
Protagonist,
yeah. And I mean this because, like, Japan also has its own history of like underground adult manga. Like, that wouldn't have been unusual in that. Like, that was sort of par for the course. It's called what is it called? Gekiga, I think, is the term. But, like, yeah, and sort of like mainstream, like, shonen manga, like, having, like, yeah, juvenile delinquent protagonist was, like, sort of unusual. Is like grittier in a different way.
I was just going to say, that's actually something I forgot. I kind of didn't pick up on that in the movie. I mean, it's been 20 years since I've seen it, but I didn't realize how it's almost like, you know, a Clockwork Orange, like you're watching this gang, basically. I just didn't pick up on that as a kid. And I don't know if it was whitewashed a little bit in the movie or if it's just something I didn't notice when I was younger. But yeah, that definitely stood out to me.
that they were in a gang, or
Not well, yeah, that they were actual criminals. Like they were basically criminals, you know. I just didn't.
Yeah, that's something that I thought about while I was reading, and that the protagonist, who's supposed, you know, he started doing heroic things, but he didn't act like a hero consistently. He wasn't selfless, at least the first part of the book. So
right.
I thought that was unusual that they were presented as flawed people. There wasn't any, like, you know, admirable hero to attach yourself to.
Right.
I mean, like, there's like, they stop everything to basically, like, have a turf war. Like, that part is sort of like, like, there's this, like, almost like this record skip quality to it. Like, there's all this stuff going on, and then, like, he's a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and yeah, they stop everything to have a turf war.
Yeah, like, a lot of the main characters are, like, very much like pieces of shit, especially Tetsuo.
Yeah, I think in the comic he was sort of not the bad guy, but he did become a monster, right? And a lot of those subplots, like, I don't remember the turf war being the movie, maybe it was, but essentially I think that they had to condense 38 issues into, like, 2 hours, right? So they had to cut something. Maybe that's why some of that, maybe I didn't pick up on some of that stuff. Maybe that's why.
I mean, Kaneda was the one that was the piece of shit.
No, but you should tell him.
Like, Tetsuo is also a piece of shit. Kaneda and Tetsuo are both pieces of shit.
I mean, I would argue that, like, almost their whole group of guys were. I mean, two of them, one of them several of them attempt to harass or rape women several times throughout this. So
Mm-hmm.
One of the things in the book that has not aged very well.
That's why I said it was like watching A Clockwork Orange. It kind of reminded me of that, you know?
I never thought of that parallel, but that makes a lot of sense because all I could think of was the Warriors with like the weird clown gang.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like so I feel like there's a subtext. Like I don't want to focus too much on like the kids being bad people, because I mean they are bad people, but they're also kids, and I feel like there's a larger subtext about like kind of urban decay and about these kids sort of being left behind by society, and they're forced to go to this like piece of shit school where they're abused by the teachers. And I feel like there's like a larger commentary about the way that society is like treating these kids, and how it's just like, oh, you're these fucking delinquents, you're a lost cause, maybe we can brainwash you into being slightly useful to society.
You can be tradesmen. It was a trade school.
Yeah.
That's your only role.
I
Good job.
want to go back to what Carlos said earlier about that other manga about, was it like a noble thief or something, Carlos? Like
Lupin.
you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, like Lupin the Third. He's sort of like, I don't know, like
that doesn't sound like a whole.
but he's like a gentleman.
It's a description though. I don't know how accurate it is, but I really like it.
So that doesn't sound like a wholesome like.
No, he's a piece of shit too.
Role. Yeah, he's also a piece of shit. As are these gangs of boys.
I mean,
was he like a dandy?
Like the Scarlet Pimpernel kind of a dandy?
A little bit, yeah.
He's like the lovable scoundrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a better. I wouldn't call him a dandy, but I call him a lovable.
Does he represent that mode of storytelling? So like, I guess I'm just trying to understand. Like, everyone talks about Watchmen. There's like all the rules that it broke, and that's why it's such a groundbreaking thing. So like, what rules did this thing break that makes it such a?
Well, I think sort of
like
that it's like, I don't know, like grittier. Like Lupin would never pop in pills.
That you know of, Carl.
Yeah, that I know. Not on screen. Not on screen. Like,
so he won't do drugs. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs. All right.
Just like it being grittier. I feel like that's a really good way to describe it. It's like the 80s was such a great time for manga and anime, and I feel like that's when it kind of really broke to like America and got more mainstream attention. And I think that was a really good point. Like AKIRA is so much grittier and darker, and it's like you have these like sad pill-popping teenagers, kind of like I don't know.
I think it was like sort of. I mean, I'm not an expert on manga by any means. I don't know all the intricacies, but I think like it was kind of a similar thing to like what was going on with American comics in the 1980s, where you have stuff like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. That's the Frank Miller one, right? Mm-hmm. I've never actually read it, but I think that's the one, The Dark Knight Returns. And, kind of those comics that are, tackling
gritty? Is it gritty?
More adult themes.
We can come back to it. I just don't find that adjective satisfying. Like,
well, here, why don't I read from the Wikipedia, where it says that AKIRA, its use of cyberpunk, political turmoil, social isolation, corruption, power. It's considered a landmark work in the cyberpunk genre, credited with spawning the Japanese cyberpunk subgenre. So that's basically, I think, the main things that made it stand out at the time. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, I kind of wish I would have read it in 1982 or at least 1988, because I'm sure that the impact would have been a much bigger. It's just like when people read Watchmen now, unfortunately, it's been imitated so much that its power is diluted, right, over time.
Well, but I think I'm just more in tune with that whole thing, where even now it's still like clear, like, okay, this is why it's a thing. But
also, I think like I think like the movie was like a bigger breakout in the States than the actual book itself was. And
I
like,
would
if
agree.
you're,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
an American in like 1990 or whenever this movie was imported over, like imagine this is the first anime that you see. Like the first anime you ever see is this movie with like these 15-year-old biker gang kids like getting into fights with clown gangsters, and like people's heads are fucking exploding, and you have this guy who's mutating into this like huge like flesh monster.
It looks so gorgeous in the theaters too. Like I think I've seen it in the theaters.
I saw it very recently, and it was
Like,
really fucking
the main
beautiful.
art's pretty good about playing it, where they were. For the midnight movie, and it's just absolutely amazing to see it in the theaters. And the music's like so lush and just it's great.
Well, yeah, even like I saw it in maybe 91, 92, and I remember it was probably the first cartoon I ever saw that was clearly for adults, right? Because at that time, all there was Disney, and then Saturday morning cartoons and like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and that was it. And then I remember I was going to watch the tape on my own when I popped it in, and the very first shot of the film is Tokyo being destroyed by an atomic bomb, and I was like, "What is this?" So I was like, "Okay, I gotta save this for my friends." And I remember me and my friends, none of us had ever seen anything like it. We just watched it over and over and over again. So again, I was gonna say, well, if I would have read this in '88, it probably would have knocked my socks off in just the same way.
Yeah, so apparently like that is why it was groundbreaking, is because it opened the door in North America for adult anime, like on the television side. People like started, I'm just reading an article where they're talking about like Ghost in the Shell, Neon Genesis Evangelion. I don't know when Cowboy Bebop, I don't know if that was 90s or if it was like late 90s, early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I did not, I was not allowed to watch this, but I had older brothers and sisters who were of an appropriate age to watch it, who allowed me to accidentally see some of these things. And it's like, they had never seen anything like this before. So it was like watching a horror, but as a cartoon. So is the word Rashomon, does that mean horror?
No, it means people telling the same story but with different perspectives.
It's based on the movie, Akira Kurosawa's movie.
Okay, so yeah, apparently that is why the comic is groundbreaking too, because they didn't do a lot of that as well.
So Jolie and Mai, so like you both seem to be saying like it's so cool because you've never seen anything like it before, and like there's some kind of like vicarious thrill about like being a kid and like, oh, there's this like art style and it used to be just for like cheesy kiddie stuff, but now it's sort of being used to like do more adult gritty things. So do we think like there's more to it beyond just sort of the novelty value of it?
No, I don't think it's a novelty at all. I think it was that it was happening in a different country and that it was imported as a novelty, and it astounded and shocked North Americans who consumed it.
But I mean, that's an interesting question, Patrick, because we've had that exact same conversation, like that exact conversation about Watchmen, and like during the Watchmen meeting, where we were saying, is there a difference between reading it in the mid 80s, having like spent 10, 20, 30 years reading superhero comics, and then having this come along and shatter everything, and reading it for the first time in 2020, when a lot of the things that Watchmen did have become sort of standard fare, the sort of anti-establishment, the questioning things. So that question, like, to see it when you're 10 or 15 and be blown away by it.
Well, like I think at least, and I don't want us to like get bogged in Watchmen because we're not talking about Watchmen, but at least with Watchmen, I think for me, I don't think it's as standard as everybody says. Like, I think there's still a lot of like superhero stuff being published that still speaks to the kind of criticisms that Alan Moore does, which I think is why it still remains very relevant. But in any case, back to Akira.
So how about some of the people who didn't have that experience of seeing it before and are reading it right now for the first time? Does it feel like it holds up not as a historical thing, but simply as a text unto itself?
I mean, I didn't see the movie when I was a little kid. I mean, but I loved it. I loved the book too. You know, I mean, I've seen things influenced by it before I read it, and I think it still holds up. I don't think it's been improved on so much. We haven't, you know, told the story so much better that to go back, it's not a historical footnote. It's still good on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I read the book like this week. I've never read the book before. And I think the last time I'd seen the movie was like 1993. So I don't have really any nostalgia for it. And I gave the book a 7. I didn't think it was like that great, but like historically, I don't really have anything to compare it to other than the fact that like there wasn't really any manga in North America.
Did manga used to be like this elaborate? Because I mean, like I've read other things, you know, from that time period. It's like it's drawn very, very quickly. Whereas this, it's like it's 3 panels, but it's like, you know, thousands of windows. You know, like you can see the bricks.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's why I asked that question, because the more we read in that other group also was like this kind of detailed thing that's amazing and to me, and then somebody like broke my illusion because that guy was like, well, actually there was a whole army of artists who drew that. That's why it looks like that.
That didn't happen for this one though. I remember.
Okay, all right. So
Now
I can
that I think about it, I remember there was like I caught like a little bit of like there was like a special episode of Cartoonist Kayfabe where they were talking about Akira, and they had a special magazine where like it had like scenes from the manga that were included in the volume that were cut later on, and they were like just as detailed and amazing, and it's crazy that it was cut. And they were saying like he did it all himself. Like
he missed a lot of deadlines.
But like I think it depends on the manga, because I could see that happening with like maybe some romance ones or something where they like kind of parse out the duties, but they didn't do that. I don't think with Akira. I've never heard that at all. Like I'm sure though it makes sense though that they would do that with the other manga where they're trying to like get it out. But I've never heard them doing that with this one. Like this one, like it was him drawing and taking forever, and then scrapping pages that he took like hours and hours on, just because. And he would like redraw scenes from hand, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff cut out.
Well, I'm very happy that I get to retain my awe then.
Yes.
That's amazing.
He did have an assistant. We discovered an assistant.
Wait, he has an assistant?
No,
Throw it away. Burn it.
Get the fuck out of here.
Wait, Carlos, that he has an assistant, or he had an assistant?
He had an assistant for this, another artist who also worked on it.
But I'm sure he only did like 10%, right? So it's fine. It's fine.
I'm looking it up.
I mean, that's like Cerberus had that. Asterix Obelix had that. Like, there's lots of times that there have been, like, and most American comics have some form of, like, combined forces. But I think that, like, in some manga, Scott McCloud makes this point that one of the things that's really cool about manga is that whereas usually American comics tend to be sort of at one register of realism, like either they're super, super cartoony. Like if you're reading Scrooge McDuck, as we might be, if Mike has his way, if you're reading Scrooge McDuck, then it's like super cartoony. But if you're reading what's his name? The guy that does all the superheroes, the painted, like super
Alex Ross.
Alex Ross.
Right.
Then it's going to be hyper realistic. But you're not going to all of a sudden see Alex Ross style realism combined with Scrooge McDuck, right? Like
Mhm.
whereas when we
Well,
were
unless Alex
Buddha,
Ross draws Scrooge McDuck.
that would be amazing.
So
But that's the thing. It's like if you read Osamu Tezuka in like when we were reading Buddha, you'll have like these pages where it's like the most elaborately beautiful background with like a super cartoony figure on top of that, or you'll go from like hyper realistic focus to like a character bouncing around the panel. And I think a lot of times with manga you have that like ability to shift registers, and that's one thing. And maybe this is speaking to the fact that the artist here was one artist, or at least one artist with a helper, is that it feels very much like it's all in the same register, even though the faces I think are very stylized and very iconic. Still, like I don't get this sense of disconnect between these like beautiful cityscapes and the architectural drawings and the characters. Like it all feels like one, like the work of one person. In the same way that like Frank Miller feels like the work of one artist, right?
Yeah, like we said earlier, like an auteur, right? Like this is not a cookie cutter thing just being churned out for a paycheck. It's like the work of one artist.
Right.
And cool enough, he also did the movie. He directed the movie, which is amazing, right? So, by the way, has Alex spoken at all?
No, but I'm here.
Alex,
would you like to give your opening statement because you haven't talked yet?
Wait, did we skip Alex during the review?
Yeah.
It's fine.
He's judging
Sorry,
all of
man.
us, and he should. So
I had my thing on speaker view, so I just didn't even notice you.
That's fine. Everyone, you all pretty much summed up my view. Amazing artwork and a pretty good story.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for coming out.
All right, see you next time.
No, elaborate, Alex. Was this
We all
your
have fun
first
here.
time? Was this your first time ever reading it or seeing it or anything?
I tried to watch the movie late at night, but I fell asleep, so I cannot. I won't talk about the movie too much. But yeah, I guess I kind of want to wait to finish the entire story to fully review it.
Sure.
I do want to. I would like to read all the volumes to actually understand it and get it. I guess if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, that's it.
John, you haven't spoken in a while. Any more thoughts? Or any other thoughts?
No, this was I don't know if I mentioned that this was my first time ever reading it, or I haven't seen the movie yet, so I think I'm going to hold off watching the movie until I read the whole thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think if like, and what year did this come out again?
82.
82.
Yeah, see, I was still in my comic collecting, so, I was still more in my Marvel superheroes, so if somebody had handed it to me and I read it, then like my mind would have been blown back in 82 reading this. So I'm kind of getting that now because I've been like, most of my teenage heroes were like, Spider-Man or somebody like that, and to kind of see these guys who were basically a-holes, I mean, it would have been something kind of new and different. So.
I do want to point out there is one character who's like unredeemed, like unremittingly like wholesome. It's Ryu, and he is so ineffectual. It's like, oh, he's this guy. He just wants to do good, and he's pretty much useless.
Which one's Ryu?
Kai's partner, her brother.
Oh, I mean,
Mustache?
He like shoot the fuck out of a bunch of cops.
He's like, I gotta do this. Yeah.
Also, I actually did read this book when I was like far too young to read this book because I rented it from the the comic book section at the Royal Oak Public Library, and I like one of my vivid memories of reading this book is like the shootout that Ryu gets into with like the cops, and like he lifts up his pant leg and he has the fucking extra magazine taped to his leg, and I don't know. I just feel like there's like some scenes in this book and they're just like so fucking good. And like the art, I don't know. I just feel like I don't fully understand like how you can read this and not on some level be impressed with it. Like there's so many. There's like I don't know. Like the fucking you can't see it. Why am I holding it up? But like the fucking like blast.
Hold on a second. What fucking page is that on?
24 and 5.
Okay.
This book actually has page numbers. We're reviewing a book that actually has page numbers. Or like the I don't know, like the spread where they show the like dome thing with the pipes coming out of it. I don't know.
Right.
I just feel like there's just so much good art in this book. Maybe others disagree. I don't know.
I will say I find it really unrealistic that it depicts a future where the 2020 Tokyo Olympics are postponed because of a pandemic.
Too soon, Keith. Too soon.
Deep sighs all around. Good job.
Is that why they postponed it due to a thing?
Or no, I think that there is a pandemic that happened like the year before. And they don't talk about it a ton, but it was predicted in 2019 there would be a beginning of a pandemic, and then the 2020 Olympics they're having trouble with getting it done. Also, to go to the movie a little bit, he made the movie while he was writing this, so the movie kind of ends after volume 2 because that's about as far as he was when he started making the movie. And so he hadn't finished it. He was doing both at the same time, but
kind of like Game of Thrones, right?
It's not quite like that. It's no Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
But I mean, like it's the same guy. He's like, well, I don't know how I want to end this, so I'm not going to just have people teleporting all over the place and Game of Thrones style. But
it's sort of like a divergence in like plot lines where they start out more or less at the same point, and I think they kind of go in different paths.
It kind of just ends right where the second book ends. Like in the book, AKIRA is a character.
Yeah.
So it's not like in the movie he kind of just appears and there isn't much after that. But
you see his organs.
Yeah, but so just for some context, like the movie doesn't try and encapsulate every issue. It just like kind of like picked a point. It's like this is a good ending point. We'll just jump to the ending. Also, that's part of the reason why the ending is so ambiguous is because he hadn't quite decided on how to end it. So, but yeah, it's there are less up to whatever. Just so people are aware, kind of where the movie fits into the manga.
So good news, John. You only have to read 2 volumes.
Yeah. Or you can see the movie.
Yeah, I might try and get through all 6.
I'm going to too.
Also, we don't like with this particular one, we don't get into the stuff where like it gets really weird, but like this story absolutely does go like really gonzo weird. For anyone who has not either seen the movie or like read past this first volume, it does get like really. It gets into some like real body horror stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like this and the worst. It's like, man, he's doing a lot of drugs. Like this is as horrific as it gets. It's like, man, that amount of drugs is enough to kill a horse or whatever. It's like it's supposed to be shocking. I don't know. It was kind of like when you're reading it, it's like, I guess I have no reference for this.
Yeah.
So, but that was supposed to be like how we were supposed to know how transformed he was. He's doing so much drugs. I was like, that I didn't think got communicated, but it definitely, yeah, as you say, the body horror just ramps up. I mean, like those creepy kids. Even that.
Kids are creepy.
Oh, by the way, has Chad spoken yet?
Me? I don't have anything to say.
Oh, because you didn't read it.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay.
Well, I mean, I have a question.
What's your question? You're good at that. No, you're good at not reading
Yeah,
a book and then
really
asking
good
good
question.
questions. Yeah.
Okay, so this I wrote this down. Okay, so obviously the point was made that Akira is it's an exotic import from Japan of a type of media that we don't have in America. And like we consumed it to the degree we had kind of allowed it to redefine our nerd culture to where like it kind of feels like I haven't seen it, so I'm on the outside looking in to people that have. I mean, despite the fact that we have a book club dedicated to it, but like it's kind of it's in the canon, right? Like there's people who've seen it, and those are the people that know, right? Okay, so I'm wondering what other items in media have operated similarly, like. Have we taken, I mean, it's America. We take things from everybody. But are there other films or books that we've just kind of taken and allowed it to redefine us nerds?
Well, yeah. I mean, we mentioned Watchmen. That did a little bit. I mean, to be honest, the Marvel.
No, I mean,
movie-
like from outside the U.S.
Oh, from outside the U.S. you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, kind of like that. I mean, like, so the problem with America is that we only seem to give a shit about America, right?
Mhm.
It's exploitation of other cultures' media that we don't have a rich manga history, right? So the fact that we adopted something that was so foreign to what we normally take is odd. So I'm wondering.
I mean, I don't want us to get like too sidetracked talking about stuff that's not Akira, but
well,
like,
I don't. But I'm wondering, like, it's so high in the canon, right? That it has to have peers that are similar to it.
well, what I was gonna say was, I mean, if we're talking about stuff that like really kind of helped push like manga and anime, like, and helped it like cross over to like North American audiences. I mean, Akira is one of them, but the other one which helped and is like very different from this is Sailor Moon, which was hugely influential
That was like
in
second
bringing
American
anime to Western audiences.
Like Transformers, for better or worse, was also a pretty big deal.
But that was American. I'd say Robotech.
Okay, Robotech.
Surely better.
Yeah, Robotech. But technically, no. But you're onto something because even Voltron is technically anime. Transor Z is anime. Astro Boy, going back to the '60s. All those. I mean, they get, unfortunately those get no respect. But yeah, like Voltron and Robotech were like massive.
The things about those shows.
Battle of the Planets.
Right. Battle of the Planets.
Oh, they would take those shows and cut them up.
Right.
And rearrange the plots.
Right.
And it like they bought basically what they were doing was just paying to have something already animated, and then they wrote their own stories a lot of times.
True.
Was
So-
Transformers was
A Marvel
Transformers
method of them.
a show in like was it an anime show?
No, Transformers was a combination of 2 or 3 toy lines. The show was created in America, but then apparently after it was canceled here, they kept making it in Japan.
Okay.
Which is very cool. Oh, so also getting back to what Chad was saying, should we be talking about BTS? Because they're from
Well, I
South
think that
Korea and they're huge now. Is that what you mean, or
The K-pop band.
yeah?
Right. Okay, so that's different,
That's
right?
fair.
We have our
I wanted to make sure to establish
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
The K-pop?
Just an aside, I think they're awesome for like flooding those crappy Twitter channels.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, that's amazing.
We can continue on our comic
Okay.
discussion now. So
It's kind of an aside question. Thank you for indulging me, but I mean, like, it's one of those things that you kind of grow up knowing that everybody who's cool has seen, and you haven't. So
So
it's part of a language that you don't have.
let me like, because I think Chad, you were saying, are there other things from other places? And I'm wondering, like, because you're right, there is some way in which that like Akira occupied and Transformers and Robotech occupied a cultural spot in
Right.
say like the 80s.
There's like a mythology to it that you just kind of know because this is our religion.
But like sticking with comics, is there anything? Because like obviously, Europe has always had a really strong comic book culture. Did anything have the same influence from European comics? Like, is there any
Tintin?
is a touch point in?
Yeah, the biggest ones are probably Asterix and Tintin, but
Didn't have the same kind of
no.
cultural influence.
It's very delayed.
Mobius?
Like,
Yeah.
I think Tintin is
Mobius.
influential now.
And like Tintin was like certainly Tintin was around, Asterix was around, but it wasn't. They didn't become cultural forces
Right.
in the U.S. in the same way that.
Oh,
Fracco that Akira is.
sorry. Someone mentioned Mobius, but before that, the one we read, what's that? Valerian.
Valerian.
Yeah.
Like in a roundabout way, is massively influential because of Star Wars and
That
what's
was
that?
Heavy metal was French. That's a
Right.
big deal.
That's a good- yeah.
Big deal.
Well,
Right.
but it was also like kept behind the counter and not.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was pretty.
So,
influential, yeah.
so Chad, I
I just
don't
meant
think
it wasn't.
I think most comic readers don't pay enough attention to the credits to realize that stuff is happening. But I think there's a lot of artists that the big two imports from Europe, and then they hit it big, and everyone starts imitating them or like glomping onto them. But I don't think most comic readers sort of realized that transfer is happening because I don't think they really explore like, who's this Grant Morrison guy? Where is he from? Is he from Ohio or England? I don't know. It doesn't matter to me because I'm just reading the comics.
Career
Right?
development, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think a lot of them, like we mentioned Robotech, they take 3 different cartoons, they change the story, they change everything, and they make it all one storyline. Whereas Akira, it was very clear this is Japanese. It's a Japanese director. It's all Japanese characters. They didn't whitewash it at all. But it reminds, because I think what usually happens is the American audience doesn't realize is it's from another country because it's kind of whitewashed. But that reminds me of another huge Belgian comic that became massive in America only because of the cartoon, and that's Smurfs, which people don't even realize.
It's Belgian?
Yeah, it's a Belgian comic strip or comic book.
Mike, read the chat.
Oh,
Did we
what?
sanitize it when it got here? Was it a lot more?
Oh, I know. I didn't even see that.
Yeah,
right.
Like
I thought that's why you brought it up.
No, I did. I was just off the top of my head. I didn't see that chat. Sorry.
No, but Smurfs is amazing. Like the comic book, the Smurfs comic book is so good.
Oh, really?
Oh my god, it's so good.
So is there anything like the cartoon?
Are you talking about the Smurfs or the comic that the Smurfs ripped off?
You're gonna get us some Smurfs to
both Belgian.
We'll have to put
Let
that
me consult my library.
Yeah. Hold it up, Jeff. I'm gonna take a photo.
Jeff.
Wow. Can you hold up
So
the
it's-
cover? Oh.
What?
Hold up the cover. Cool. So it really is good, eh?
Oh, it's
Wow.
so good.
What about the comic that Smurfs ripped off, though?
What comic are you talking
It's like Doozers or something.
Yeah, it's so good. They're legit good. They're the same.
I'm looking at this up.
I don't know what's dinging. Maybe the oven's going. Look at
Like kind of the same realm as the Marsupilami.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're fantastic.
Well, Jeff, I know that you nominated, let's say, Tintin and Asterix. Those are both really short. Maybe we could, if we pick it as a group and do Tintin, Asterix, and Smurfs.
Oh yeah,
all in 1 month.
It's a nice little European combo there.
It would be
Yeah.
the Belgian invasion.
The Belgian invasion, yeah.
Love it.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think if if we consider what we all just chatted about, like how comics influenced North America, or how they kind of broke into North America, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about how, like we're comparing Smurfs to like Akira. You know what I mean? There's two very different comics, and I think there's something to be said for that in North America, where we we don't compartmentalize, but like this would be considered like very graphic and not in the same sort of age category of appropriateness. So like now I'm thinking about Chad's question in the context of, is there anything that's like super adult that broke in?
And
I mean,
the comics code was still in place when like through the 90s, right? So it would make it really hard for a lot of stuff to break through.
And the Playboy magazines, though, they were dirty comic books.
Yeah, they did.
I think they sold comics that didn't have that stamp on it.
That too.
Yeah,
So,
like
I mean,
their underground
underground
comics, heavy metal. This is the beginning of Love and Rockets, and
But I mean, I think that the European comic book scene never quite crossed over in the same way that Japanese manga would in the 90s.
yeah.
Which is weird because it's so. I mean,
Right. Like, why wouldn't they just... I don't understand why there's not Asterix in every kid's collection. I've never even read it, but I should have, right?
you haven't?
No, never. Maybe, no, I don't think so. Oh, you have it? Well, it's just, I mean, we can't control what catches on and what doesn't, but it is unfortunate that, I mean, because Akira is great, but it is also violent. And as a 14-year-old, of course, that's what I wanted to read. I wanted to read Akira. I wouldn't have wanted to read Asterix, but Asterix or Tintin is what I would have wanted to read when I was probably younger, and it wasn't really available as far as I know. Should have been though.
No, it was. You could get it in. I grew up reading Tintin.
Okay.
Even like the really racist Tintin, which is weird looking back. It was like, why did my parents allow this in the house? It's not appropriate.
Know your enemy.
Yeah, yes. Like, but that's not how it was presented.
No.
But no, it was available, but yeah, it was nothing. I mean, the only thing I can think of is there has been sort of this dance between, like, European countries in general, and specifically the United States and Japan, and sometimes China for like sort of cultural products that cycle through. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like the way that
Korean animation's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm not even like the samurai films. Like samurai films have like major influence on American like aesthetic in film, but also beyond. So it's like, I don't know. I'm pointing it out as a pattern. I don't know why it exists. Like, but you can go back to artwork, like the.
Oh, you're gonna talk.
They're very much inspired by like Japanese woodcuts. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, American art has a very long and checkered history of Orientalism. So, I mean, if you want to start with like breaking in, you're gonna have to maybe like that's probably the core of where you're gonna start. Like, and it's fetishized. It's gotten to the point where anything that is imported internationally is just. To me, when I see people consume it the way that they do, it looks like fetish to me, or it reads as fetish to me.
Do you mean like how I have Chinese placemats? Because like I'm not even kidding. Like it's ridiculous that I have.
No, that's just like appropriation. What I'm talking, what I'm talking, but it goes both ways.
Forward on the screen.
You have these
I'm not at home.
Oh.
But I do know people who would have like their whole apartment was just anime and manga, and that's it.
That's super
And it's
fetishy
like,
and gross.
and it's like you grew up I know, Southfield. It's like,
Well, no, but I think if you love manga and anime, it's cool to have that. But for someone to to own something they don't even understand, like I have a dream catcher or whatever, that to me is ridiculous. But if you just like a manga or anime, I think that's okay to like decorate your apartment with that stuff. No?
I mean, I think there's like, yeah, no, go ahead, Jolie. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's not what I'm talking about, though. Like, there are people who cross the line. Like, I know I should have been born Japanese. Like, I was born in the wrong country. Like, that kind of shit. That's what I'm talking about. Like, but like, it also goes in the other way, right? Like, where in parts of Japan, they celebrate Americana. So it's just othering. It's just cultures othering and celebrating, commodifying other cultures.
Really, right?
Notice, like, even in this conversation, like, I think Chad inadvertently referred to the comic.
Oh, I see you. I see that. Yeah, I see that. That's problematic, Chad.
Wow, Chad. My mom's got one too.
My house! I'm at Eric's house! He's the pig!
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, not nothing, but they do want to make money selling this stuff.
It's fine if it's utilitarian.
Wow, Chad, I didn't know that we had some Baka Gaijin.
Who uses the fan method? No one!
So there is actually, to sort of like, I don't know, douse a little bit of
fan.
But I mean, there is, specifically in manga, there is like, well, Japanese like animation and comics and American animation and comics, there is like a go around, because like most of this artwork style like comes from Tezuka. Like there are like a lot of the standardized stuff, but he was looking at Disney. So like when like we say, like a lot of people point out like the big eyes, right? Mm-hmm. That comes from like Disney animation, and he just like did it a little bit more. So like there's this weird back and forth, and now American animation is heavily influenced by anime and manga, like was Steven Universe. Well, like anything, like Powerpuff Girls, like you can just go down the list.
Mm-hmm. Rick and Morty.
Like, yeah, even Rick and Morty.
I just sent a Onion article. The headline is, report 58% of world's Japanese speakers are white 23-year-old American males. I think that's what Jolie's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely remember people in high school, and they were like, after I graduate high school, I'm going to Japan. And like they read nothing but manga, and yeah, that whole like, if I had one wish, it would be that I could be Japanese, was something that's
Yikes.
I mean, like, I don't want to criticize manga fans too much for being cringy, because I mean, Western comic book fans.
But we do.
Like,
I mean, talk about cringy, right?
I mean, I'm not pointing any fingers.
I don't know if they can hear me.
I mean, some of you have been to my house. How cringy am I? I mean, let's get real.
I mean,
Emma Frost made my dreams come true. I'm not going to suck any shit.
You have a sweet mural on your wall, Patrick.
I'm sorry, what?
You have a sweet mural on your wall.
I do. Commissioned it exclusively. So.
Well, actually, we were talking about kind of like the Eastern, like right now, if we go over to the other side of the door right now, you'd find my wife watching one of her Korean dramas that are like all over Netflix and everything. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like, okay, well, what is it about it? And she just gave me this really nice breakdown of how they just structure the stories, how men are represented, how women are represented. And she said it's just really different than what she would see here in the States in terms of television shows. That's what she really enjoys about it. So she just watches all the time. And she says also, it makes me have to pay attention and watch TV because I have to
Subtitles,
sit
right?
there and read. So it's
Yeah.
almost like she's reading as well as watching television. So
I think that's very similar to what I was talking about. Like Korean, I don't know enough about it because I'm a guy and I don't watch those things. But I do know that there's an entire Korean channel on Netflix. You just scroll down. So like it's like I think the Hallmark Channel probably learns from that discipline. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like how much media do we consume that is directly informed by the mythology that Akira has taught us? So similarly, Korean dramas probably inform the mythology of how romantic comedies are made. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because she watches all those holiday Hallmark shows too, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be some kind of correlation there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So should we? Oh, go ahead, Jolie.
Well, okay. So I have a question because we always end up talking about it, and it's like, and Patrick sort of mentioned it earlier, where it's like, okay, cool, Akira sits in a certain point in time in our comics history. Did anything after that, like, come into play that did or accomplished what Akira was trying to accomplish better?
Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know enough about manga.
Well, I feel like Carlos does, or Keith,
or Oliver. At least they know more than I do.
I would say I would agree with like the character, like Ghost in the Shell is like just as stylish, but feels much deeper. Like Ghost in the Shell like feels tragic at parts. Like brutal, like sit on your couch and like not do anything for like 10 minutes, tragic. Like
talking about the book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's sort of very similar. Like it sits also in sort of like a cyberpunk realm.
All I can think of is the throwaway joke in FLCL where they were like, "What does your dad do?" He's like, "Oh, he's a professor who's been writing his thesis on Neon Genesis Evangelion for 5 years."
Yeah.
So I feel like the fact that can be a throwaway joke in a different anime.
It's like 20 years.
To it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of things that came after this that definitely picked up. Like I think it said Ghost in the Shell, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Cowboy Bebop. I mean, just like kind of, took this, and I mean, I feel, I don't know how much anime I've seen before Akira. Like, I don't know if there's any other classics that, others outside of like historical.
There were some that were big, like Vampire Hunter D was a big deal. Perfect Blue was a big deal.
Those are all after, right?
They were early 80s too. But like that one was the biggest deal because it's amazing. Like it just like I think they did it. Didn't they do like a different frames per second too, which was a big deal? Or am I not? I'm not sure.
I think anime has like a lower.
Typically, but I thought that one maybe didn't.
No,
maybe. I'm not sure.
Yes.
So I think it's worth note, like Japanese underground comics. Like so this is Tatsumi, who did Abandon the Old in Tokyo, which is a short story that is brutal and sad. But I mean, that's the name of the volume. But I think for a while, like Japanese comics existed sort of in two realms, and Akira was part of them coming together. Let me see, because Tezuka did have like some classics that like hold up. I mean, Barefoot Gen also, like I pointed out at when we were first talking that Barefoot Gen was like the first translated manga into English in like a major way. And that's these, I mean, it also speaks, as I like say all of these titles, it also speaks to just like the wide range of like comic books in Japan, because both Tatsumi and Barefoot Gen, and I forget the artist's name, like those are both like slice of life, like in very different ways. Like Barefoot Gen is about the atomic bomb and the aftermath of the atomic bomb. But yeah, no, there were. It's just, it's like things were different after Akira a little bit. And I mean, Akira was the first one that was like translated into English. You could do like what Scott McCloud did, which is like hang around in like Japanese import stores. And if you couldn't read Japan, you could just sort of piece together. Couldn't read Japanese, you could just sort of piece together the stories and be inspired by the artwork. But like, that's sort of as deep as it got.
Let's say this is a very superficial plot, but like you could follow along a lot of this just reading the artwork.
Akira?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. It's like storyboard. It's like I said, with an American comic, they would load it with narration and thought balloons, and this is just action with dialogue. So.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm thinking of his interaction with the nurse in the infirmary, and it's like, you don't even need dialogue for that whole scene. It's just, he's a shit heel, she's upset, he's a piece of shit. So.
That is a truly great scene at illustrating just like what a idiot asshole Kaneda is. Just like she tells him she's pregnant, and he just has like,
I want to watch.
He's just
I want
so
more drugs.
unfazed
Give me
by
more
it.
drugs.
So anyway, we should probably start wrapping it up because we still have to do the voting, right?
Yep.
So do you want to? Well, we can go around the room again. I'll just say quickly, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I still give it an 8. As I was flipping through the pages, I actually do think the art was better than I did say the first time. It's just that sometimes the figures are a little bit distorted in an unrealistic way, but his line work was actually better as I was looking at it now. But yeah, I guess I'd have to read the whole thing to really have a full grasp of it. But like I said, I was slightly underwhelmed in that I would rather watch the movie for sure. And that's my final review. So then, Carlos.
I'm gonna stick with the 7, but I do want to keep reading. I love the artwork. 8 or 9 for artwork. Wait, I picked Chad last time and he didn't. He didn't read it. John, what did you think after the discussion?
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I think I gave it a 9 before. I think I'm going to stick with the 9. Like I said, it probably gets that extra point because it got me interested, ordered the second volume, and going to go as far, probably try and finish it. And then I'll probably see the movie after. But I think somebody, you said it was like, is the 3 volumes is the movie's based on, or?
2, I think.
2? Oh, really? Just the 2?
I thought that.
Wow.
I thought that he finished the story in the movie, right? Like it sort of I thought it adapted up until volume 2 and then had a different ending.
And they had a different ending? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll do that then. I'll read the first 2, then watch the movie, and then see if I'm going to read the next 4 after that. So, all right, yeah, but yeah, stick with the 9. All right, I'll take Michael.
Oh, I already went.
Oh, you already went?
Yeah,
Oh,
first.
Patrick then.
I guess I'll stick with a 7.5. I'm always impressed when I read manga, like with the art. I mean, it's the incredible level of detail that goes in there that you rarely ever see in American comics. So, 7.5. Oliver and friends, please come up with a group score for all of us.
I don't know that we have a group score.
It's the natural log multiplied by 3.
All right.
Right.
Imaginary number.
So if you take the exponent, no. So I'm going to stick with my 8.5. I think this is a fantastic book. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's very groundbreaking. I think the art is beautiful. I like the story and the characters. I don't think it's perfect. I think in a few respects it has aged poorly, but I think by and large, for the most part, I think it still feels very modern, very relevant. I think probably the movie is better. I think it kind of streamlines the story and makes it a lot more compact, but I still think the book is incredibly good. And so, Keith.
I think that the movie does a much better job of not, like Tetsuo is just like he's biking along and then all of a sudden he's a bad guy. Versus in the movie they do a better job of showing him as like a person who's transitioning into a monster. But other than that, like the artwork, I think it was fantastic, a 10, and just I really love reading it. Part of the problem I think is that when I read it, it just goes so quickly, and you can race past like some of this intricate, amazing artwork. But so I give that an 8. And if people want to know about cyberpunk, they can read Neuromancer, which came out in '82. And there's also Snow Crash in the early 90s, which predicted things like, I think coined the term Avatar. And, I mean, like if you read Snow Crash now, it's a cyberpunk from early 90s that feels like it could have been written today. Like nothing is outdated in it.
Now, Keith, Neuromancer and Snow Crash, those are both the type of books that don't have the pictures in them, right?
Unfortunately. so far. But yeah, I saw in the comments people were asking about cyberpunk genre.
And Oliver and Friends.
It's Oliver and Company.
Fuck you, Keith. Get the fuck out of my house.
Everyone hated that. I still give it a 10 for the art. It's really, really good. There's not a lot of comic books or manga I can really give a 10 for the art. It's one of them, though. I still give the story a 9.5. Kind of wish, I don't know, I kind of wish we had like some different discussion related to like how the 80s was the big time for the war on drugs. And then this was like extra shocking, like how much drug use was in this. But whatever. So yeah, whoever wants to go next.
Alexander.
Yeah, let's do Alex.
I'll stick with my 7.5. I'd rather finish the whole series before I make like a final judgment on the story, but the artwork is probably the best part of it so far.
And you're gonna watch the movie. You're gonna try and watch the movie again, right?
Yeah, I will do that, definitely.
Cool.
Who hasn't gone?
Jolie and Jeff and me.
Jeff then.
I'll stick with my. So I almost went down. Like the conversation was great, but somehow I'm glad I read it. But I wouldn't. Unlike John, I would not go. I'm not going to seek out the second volume. So, like 6.5.
Who's left? Anyone? Or is that it?
Jolie.
Oh, Jolie. Yeah, Jolie.
Hi, okay. Everyone, that's Hannah. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
Her.
I haven't touched a cat in for 2 years, so it's been really. Oh, there's some light so you can see her. Anyway, I gave the book a 7 when we started, and I think I still give it a 7. It's not like the best, and I didn't like the art as much. Someone mentioned Scott McCloud during the conversation, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Scott McCloud talked about all of these tropes of manga or that are used in manga, and maybe this was like a precursor, or
Never got a bloody nose.
Exemplar of.
Yeah, well, not an exemplar, but definitely like a jumping off point. But you didn't see a lot of that, or you did, and it was like I don't know. I just thought the pacing was really confusing. I think Keith mentioned it earlier that it just went by really fast, and for me it was really hard to read. Like this, maybe it was like transposed. Like it's never meant to. If it was read in reverse before and then it was done this way, they should have just left it when they brought it to North America. Because honestly, it made it harder for me to read, and that's why I gave it such a low score. Because it was just the dialogue is terrible, and the storytelling is not great, and the pacing is really bad. So still 7, maybe a 6.5.
I think we got to quickly mention that it was written by, or the English version was adapted by Joe Duffy, who was kind of just a standard Marvel writer of the day. Like I think she did Star Wars, so maybe it could stand to get a new translation by a better writer, right?
It's a thought.
Maybe.
And I'm not sure who's after me.
Mike Prime.
Mike Prime.
So I think I give it like a 7.5 or 8. I'm gonna go down to 7 to 7.5. I'm glad I read it because it's like a classic. I never would have read it otherwise, but I have no desire to slog through another 38 issues. I found it kind of repetitive after a little while. The plot was so slow, even though there was lots of action, which is kind of weird. But anyways. Okay, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I guess that wraps up.
I think that's the danger of not having like characters that you care about.
Yeah, really.
That's why it's like, I hate to say it, but it's like, I think at the end of the day, the movie is probably the better way to consume this, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, I guess it's the end.